Perfect. All right. Well, then welcome everybody to this month's Tools and Technology Forum. We're going to talk a little bit about legal technology self-assessment. I was going to walk through a little bit of a journey that we took here at Discover last year, and then would love to hear your own experiences, maybe help point out in areas where maybe I went astray in our process, and it's always a great opportunity to learn with you guys. Just by way of introduction, in case, because I don't normally talk a whole lot during these forums, but my name is Brian Pomeroy. I'm Senior Manager of Legal Technology at Discover Financial, and I am serving as co-chair for Tools and Technology with Denica this year. And so I think as we approach we're approaching the end of this 1 year assignment, I will be serving as the chair of this particular interest group going into next year. So with that, I think Bronco, I was going to lead with a couple of polling questions. If you could go ahead and display the first one, please.
Yes.
So the first question is around how often you perform legal technology self-assessment. So just weigh in, take a second here. Do you do these on an annual basis, every 1 to 3 years, a little less frequently, or maybe you haven't even performed one for your organization yet? Like to hear. And then Bronco, you can display the results when you have those. All right, so a good number have not yet performed one, and it looks like maybe the predominant bucket here is 1 to 3 years. For myself at Discover, we did one in 2017, and then just again last year. So it was just a little over 4 years in between the two. For those who do it annually, I'd be interested. Any thing you want to share around why you do it so often? Because I'm trying to maybe right size this a little bit. I feel like 4 years was too long. We probably should be doing it more often than what we did. But I'm curious. I was thinking maybe annually or every other year or something like that. But I'm just kind of wondering if there's a significant benefit to doing it more often.
This is Elaine Ross. I'm from Thrive, and I can speak up. So I've been in this role for about 3 years, and our organization has been going through transformational change. So we've just needed to do it every single year just to make sure that we were still on the right path. I don't think we'll continue to do it annually.
Mm-hmm.
In the future, probably every other year, but right now it's just something we have to do.
That's a really, really good point. When you're in a period of extreme transformation and things are moving very quickly, I could see where assessing that more regularly is absolutely a necessity. Very good, thanks. And then the second question, Bronco, if you could put that up there real quick. Are you in the process of or about to kick off a self-assessment process? I'm just kind of curious how many people on the call are actually actively engaged in this right now or getting ready to engage in this process. And then I think you can post those results, Bronco. Okay, so about a third of us are actively engaged in the process. That's good. It's good to know. So hopefully the information that I'm going to share here on our journey is helpful. And again, as we're going through this, I please chime in with any questions or comments that you have. Again, love to learn from each other as we go through this. So, providing Bronco, can you still see my presentation here?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to just walk through. Let me see if I can advance it. There we go. Just walk through real quickly. I'm take maybe 10 or 15 minutes and just briefly walk you through the process that we engaged in last year here at Discover. Ultimately, we wanted to do a technology self-assessment. We approached it in phases of work. There were 3 steps that preceded the actual assessment work that we did. The first one was just around creating a technology inventory. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And oh, I think there's somebody who needs to mute. If you're not on mute, if you could just double check that and make sure you're muted. Okay, so we did our technology inventory. Then we did a benchmark review. After we completed those 2 steps, we did a survey across the legal organization. We're assessing the technology and any potential process improvements that we needed to make. And then we used all 3 of the outputs or the outcomes of those 3 steps to kind of inform the self-assessment work that we did. And then ultimately, the last step in this whole process was to update our technology roadmap for the next 1 to 3 years. And so let's talk a little bit about each one of these steps. The first one was to create a technology inventory. We had all of this information, but it was a bit fragmented. Some of this information was in our vendor management platform. Some of it was in our contracting system. Some of it was in our risk assessment system. Some of it was just floating around in my head or the heads of other people in the organization. So we just took a few weeks and just kind of pulled all of this together in a particular tracker, just so we could document the different software titles that we're using, a little bit about what they do for us, some high-level contract terms, any preferred pricing we were getting, when our contracts were expiring, how much we're paying for these services, what the competitive landscape is like who are some of the other players that either maybe we considered or have been reaching out to us that have solutions around some of these technology areas.
Yeah.
And then some information around satisfaction, how satisfied were the end users with tools, and then how satisfied are we generally with the vendor relationship that we have. So that really consisted of the inventory. That was step 1. Then step 2, we identified some surveys, what we consider to be reliable sources for comparative analysis. And we're really just trying to answer a few questions as we look at our industry and our peers in the industry. First question was, how does our overall spend compare with others when you can look at it as a percentage of your departmental budget? How do others allocate that spend across their technology areas, and how do we compare there? So are we spending in a comparative way across different disciplines? And then are we deploying the same kinds of solutions consistently with what our peers are deploying? So, for example, we want to know, like, if everybody had a particular solution deployed and we just haven't done that yet, we just want to understand why we have it and make sure we really kind of interrogate that reason and try to kind of confirm whether we felt comfortable with that decision or if it was really a technology maybe we should consider. Just before I get into the next step here, I'm curious for those who look at comparative data, benchmarking data, where are some of the places that you go to get your information? And then I'll reveal who we went to. Anybody care to share where they get their benchmarking data? Oh, and that's fine. Totally fine. So we went to two sources. The ACC Legal Technology Survey that was put out in 2021, and then also there was a clock survey, a technology survey that was put out in 2020. And I know there are a lot of other places you can go. I think in the when we did this back in 2017, we relied on some really good information that came out of Gartner. And so, and I know there are other potentially other sources as well. So going back to our benchmarking work, the first question was around, how much do departments our size typically spend on technology as a percentage of their overall budget? And what we're finding just across the board in the ACC survey, that look like, roughly 2% is what departments spend. We're spending 1.9%, so I don't think that 0.1% that we were off was significantly impacting our ability to solve for the needs that we had, but very, very consistent. Does anybody spend wildly more than 2%? Just out of curiosity? And maybe
5%.
that's probably not a fair 5%. That's yeah, I thought that was really interesting that across the board, whether you're a small, medium, or large company, it just seemed on average to work out to be 2%. I was a little bit surprised by that. The next question is around how the spend is being allocated across the technology areas. And we were focused on the larger companies, given our size. And it looked like there were 5 top areas where larger companies are spending large chunks of their technology budget. It's around legal research, board portals, document management, e-signature, and compliance. The one footnote I had here at the bottom is I just wanted to point out to our leadership team that it looked like that workflow tools and workflow automation is of notable interest to larger companies. I think it's probably of interest to everybody, but I think as you get larger in scale, automating some routine services, there's always a goal. And so when we wanted to look at if there was anything that we could be doing in a more automated way within our own organization. And so that was essentially a talking point for us. I mentioned that we looked at clock as well. And so one of the reasons that I like the clock survey is because it talked about percentage deployed rather than dollars spent. And like, for example, if you look at percentage deployed, almost everybody has deployed matter management systems. It's like one of the top ranked tools that legal organizations deploy. The reason why it didn't show up in the top 5 for the ACC survey is because those are typically not super expensive tools to deploy. So we wanted to look at it in both ways, not only dollars spent, but just percentage deployed. And so when we look at it, whether either way, when we slice it, the one gap that seemed to jump out at us is that here at Discover, we had not technically deployed a document management system. And what I mean by that is it's not as if we don't do document management. We do, we have a SharePoint site. We have, shared drives, secure drives, encrypted drives. We have a lot of different places where we can store information. But it is, but we just have not taken that centralized, DMS type approach to how we handle that documentation. So the benchmarking evaluation that we did just kind of bubbled that up as a gap, and we tucked that in our back pocket, and then we moved on to the next step. Okay, so step 3 is the survey. So we sent out a quick survey to the legal organization, just 3 simple questions, some feedback fields for them to opine on some of their pain points. We had about a 50% participation rate, which based on our experience is pretty good in the legal department to get half of the people responding. So we were happy with that. And I had about 100 different comments or needs that were shared that bubbled up out of this survey. And I just kind of broke it down by percentages. There were some process improvement ideas that were raised. Um, there were some people that just fill out the survey just to say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. You know, we we like what we got, and we feel like we have the tools we need." So it's always good to get that feedback as well. Um, there were some people who had some training needs. There are some solutions that we're currently using that they thought we could better utilize or could enhance. And then there were some people who requested, specific technologies that they felt like were missing. And um, to kind of dovetail or piggyback with our benchmarking work that we did, of the 10% that raised the request for new technology, nearly all of them were document management requests. So that was good. The survey kind of validated what we were seeing in the benchmarking analysis that we did. And so from the survey, we committed to spinning up 2 new process enhancement projects for 2022. And so we're in the process of defining exactly those projects now. Then the 4th step was around the actual assessment. So what I did is I took the inputs from all of that work that we did, the inventory work, the benchmarking work, the surveys and the feedback that we got, the satisfaction scores that we assigned to each of our tools, the cost effectiveness, what we were paying for these. And we developed kind of just our own little scoring mechanism where we awarded points based on, certain performance bands. Once we scored everything out, then we basically just dropped it into Tableau, and we created performance quadrants. And we were trying to see, based on the scores, is it identifying anything that we feel like we need to address? So the good news, I thought, in this is that in the lower right-hand corner, we had a really high degree of satisfaction that was clustered around what we think is a fairly modest average spend. So, for the most part, people seem to be pretty pleased with the tools that we're giving them. And I think we're doing a really good job of managing the spend around those tools. A couple of the outliers there, we had, legal research service. We just have a lot of subscriptions that we pay for, a lot of legal research platforms that we're involved in. It's expensive, but it's necessary. You have to give your attorneys, space to do a place to do the research, and so it's just the nature of the business. The good news is that they're fairly pleased with what we've given them by way of tools in their toolkit. So not really a whole lot we can do there other than just continue to assert some discipline around our spend. We had some low satisfaction in our regulatory compliance space. We spun up some projects in 21 and a few that are still in progress in 22 to address that. In the matter management space, you can see e-billing was in that lower right-hand quadrant. Pretty high degree of satisfaction around e-billing. We do have some gaps in the analytics and reporting of our matter management tool. We're addressing that by sending the data out to a data warehouse and then doing our own reporting using Tableau. So able to kind of work around that. In the bottom left-hand corner, that was the document management score. Probably the most significant pain point that came out in this whole exercise. That was the bad news. The good news is that we don't currently spend a lot of money on document management. So we felt like we had the ability to address this particular pain point with just actually, spinning up a project around that. So. And then the last step of this, the last piece was refreshing our technology roadmap. So this isn't the actual one. This is just kind of illustrative of what we did. But we had just a series of projects that had a particular technology focus. We delivered, several of those projects during 2021. Some of them have bled into 2022. We've got a few that are, in the hopper for later this year. And then at the very bottom, we've identified kind of what we would consider to be our flagship project for the year that we're currently engaged in. So that's, I think that was my last slide. So that was the journey that we went on. I wanted to take a few minutes and just kind of walk you through that. As I mentioned at the very top of the call, I did invite Wolters Kluwer to join. I wanted to give them a few minutes just to talk a little bit about what they're doing in this assessment space. It was just kind of a fluke of timing. We had just completed all of our assessment work, and we did this all internally. We didn't partner with a vendor in this process. But my rep at Wolters Kluwer reached out to me just on the back end of us completing this work with a new tool that they were creating for their clients, and wanted me to take a look at it and provide some feedback to them on it. I thought it was really slick, and I just thought, because of the topic at hand, I wanted to invite them on the call and give them a few minutes just to speak to the process that they support. So I don't know, Allison, you want to take that?
Hi, Brian. Yes, thank you so much. Do you mind if I share my screen here for a moment? Just a few.
Oh, go right ahead.
Okay. Pause that. Okay. Are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see
Okay.
it.
Thank you. So my name is Allison Berlin from Wolters Kluwer's ELM Solutions. And first, thank you to Ryan and ACC for the opportunity to share how we've approached the idea of the ELM maturity assessment ourselves. So I'm going to run through a really brief background here of how we came to the realization that this is something where we could provide greater support. Please feel free to stop me at any point to raise questions, comments. But this was really one of the stats that stood out to us. The fact that legal technology spend that Brian touched on earlier is really projected to increase threefold by 2025. And we understood this is propelled by a number of factors, among others, including the acceleration of digital transformation in general, as well as headcounts really remaining relatively flat as work for legal departments increases. So understandably, legal tech is being leaned on to deliver greater efficiencies to meet those productivity demands. So with the expanded use of technology, we really recognize the importance of helping in the development of a multi-year technology strategy. So one that meets those productivity needs of the legal team, but maintains the alignment with the overarching organizational goals. Thinking back to the legal tech roadmap that Brian just shared, for instance. So if we think for a moment about kind of the importance of, or the ways that legal tech roadmap can support you, and three main ways that we're sharing here through the definition of, yeah, was there a question? Oh. So through the definition of technology investments that deliver on business priorities, it provides a visualization, really a method of communication for the incremental steps that you can take to reach those longer term goals. And it also helps with cross-functional buy-in due to alignment on those critical goals. So like I said, our intention in the development of this tool in particular that we're sharing with you today is to provide support for those looking to identify the best path to advance their enterprise legal management maturity. So with that in mind, the assessment tool serves as really a consultative approach to making informed technology decisions, and specifically really those that can help to prioritize efforts in line with where there really is the greatest potential for technology to have an impact and deliver the greatest value. So I'm going to jump into a real quick look at the tool itself in a moment here. And you'll see when I do that it's categorized into four main areas of vendor management, financial management, business intelligence, and technology. Within each category, our team has defined a series of questions that takes into consideration two things really, both whether your organization does or does not have each aspect established, but also the level of importance to the organization. Just a quick preview here, like you can see the categorization, the questions here, and then once we run through this with our our teams, we provide some visual results. So if we take here the example of panel management, the bar graph here representing the current level of maturity, and the orange dots represent the level of importance to the organization. So the tool here is effectively highlighting those areas where technology can play a part in advancing your maturity, specifically where it matters most to the business. So with this, your focus can remain on the application of technology to deliver the greatest value. So I'm going to quickly jump into the tool itself here. Like I said, you'll see those 4 main categories and the subcategories within. And each question here will allow you to define whether this is something that you currently have in place, do not have in place, or partially have in place. And additionally allows you to identify the level of importance to the organization on a similar kind of a 3-point scale here. And these work together to drive that associated gap like we just talked to. So once this is completed in its entirety, you'll be provided with varying levels of results, and those at the higher level, as you see here, being kind of your overarching level of ELM maturity. And then we move into some of the more detailed results that we provide. So like I said here, the higher level maturity, so you'll see by each of those 4 main categories, an alignment of where you are with your maturity as compared to your the importance to the business on each of those categories. So that will highlight, like you said, like we see here, business intelligence being that gap that we're speaking to. The same is provided within the results at a more kind of granular, the subcategory level as well. So for example, this can be leveraged in a number of ways, but where we saw that financial management, for example, was really kind of in alignment, we can still speak to areas where there's opportunity. So in this case being spend management in this example. You can also kind of have the chance to drill down a little bit further to understand the driving forces behind where we did see larger gaps in business intelligence. In this example, advanced analytics and AI being the driving force there. We also within this have provided kind of general summaries of what each of these maturity levels really mean. So again, in this example, the summary of what developing looks like. And we've also provided some action steps to advance that level of maturity. And again, that's provided at this kind of overarching level, as well as at the category level down below. So once we provide these, and Brian, I'm not sure if you've seen yours specifically yet, but we do provide these results within a branded and kind of personalized microsite link, which allows you to share these results across your team. Again, like I said, with the intention being that this tool, as you walk through it, as you understand what's within, provides that baseline view of where you currently stand and allows you to set those appropriate short and long-term goals to define that legal tech roadmap that will address your greatest areas of opportunity to meet those demands of increased productivity. So that's really the overarching view of how we're looking to partner. Like Brian said, they took that on themselves, but we're providing the opportunity here to provide that consultative discussion. And we have some additional resources, if I can get back to the slides here, including the chance to request your own maturity assessment. We have some content that kind of speaks to what Brian was speaking to as well in terms of the creation of a legal tech roadmap as well. So thank you again, Brian, for the chance to share this with the team. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them as well.
Fantastic. No, I thought this was really good. Like I said, it came in a little bit late with the process that we had just engaged in, but it was fun to do the assessment myself, just to see if it was telling me something similar. And yours is a little you're a little more broad in your categories than I feel like what we address. So just me taking it on my own and sending it over to my rep, it made me realize that we probably could have been a little more inclusive in the things that we considered. Yeah. Anybody, any questions or any comments for Allison? Then I think Bronco, do you have another polling question?
Yes.
Yeah, I think let's go ahead and throw that up there. Okay, which approach have you taken to perform self-assessments? Have you primarily doing this internally, self-guided, going at it on your own like we did? Do you have you partnered with vendors? Have you used both approach or neither approach? Just kind of curious where we're at there. And then Bronco, if you want to display those results. Okay, it looks like we do primarily do these internally. For those who have, no, I won't ask that question. And then the final question. Okay, and do you find doing a self-assessment exercise worthwhile? So absolutely. So here I would just be curious, like when you do these, are you finding that they really do uncover gaps that you're maybe haven't been thinking about, or do they kind of confirm what you already know, or do you feel like they're just really not helpful? And then Bronco, while we're waiting for the responses on that, I noticed people in the chat were chiming in with some really good, resources for benchmarking material. Is there a way that we can capture that? That might be good to document that, because I'm seeing I'm seeing some resources here that I wish I would have thought of as well, and it might be good to maybe document, memorialize that somewhere.
Sounds good. I'll take care of it.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, and then you can display those results. Well, good. I'm glad that no one's finding it a complete waste of time. I think when we did this in 2017, it kind of confirmed what we had already known. But this time around, it was actually a useful exercise for us. I don't think we were recognizing quite the pain point that we had around document management. It just wasn't being vocalized. But when we put the survey out there, when we did the benchmarking work, and we really started to kind of listen to what we were hearing, it did seem to bubble up a legitimate need that we had. So we're glad that we did that exercise this time around. So with that, any other comments or any questions, any more you want to talk about related to this topic? And that's totally fine, quiet crowd. I always hate to like, oh, go ahead.
I have a question that's not related to this, but it's related
Sure.
to something that might be interesting, technology-wise. Has anyone been asked about digital blockchain signatures at all? We just had someone recently ask if it's something that we have. And I don't know if anyone else is now getting asked this question at all.
And it was, say again, it was block what?
Blockchain digital signatures.
Blockchain digital signatures. That's not something I've run into here. I don't know if anyone else has.
Good to know that I'm not the only one. Good. Thank you. That was helpful.
I was gonna say you might be alone on that one.
Yeah, we just got someone who asked, we have a client who's using this and asked if it's something that we can accept, and we've not run across this. So I'm like, I
Interesting.
have absolutely no idea. And apparently this is now supposed to be the direction that some folks are going in. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to see, especially with global stuff. Thank you. That was all.
You bet. You bet. No, I'm going to jot it down and do a little research ourselves. I don't know. I mean, I personally, no one's brought it to me, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't presented itself, to someone else within the legal department. They just haven't come to me about it.
Yeah, I started trying to do some research on, it looks like DocuSign was going to do some integration with a trusted service provider, but then they said no because it was too expensive and slowed down the actual signature process. And so I guess, the questions that I have were just what requires like the authentication of it, but also is this something that we may be required to start doing in the future if more clients start to ask for this from a transaction perspective, even though I'm not really sure what additional security it has versus any other digital signature. But I know since we were talking about technology, I was like, oh, let's just ask, and maybe I was the only one, but
all right, it might be a future topic that we can discuss. So.
Yeah.
Great. I saw in the chat, a couple of requests for the decks that Alice and I shared. So we'll get those collected, and I'll get those over to Bronco, and he can make those available through the ACC site. Great. Anything else? Well, then I am going to cut the call short today because I know we're all very busy and don't need to belabor the topic. But it's been great to share our journey with you, and hopefully you found that helpful. I don't know. I think our topic next month is around AI, and Denica will be back to do the presentation on that. So we'll look forward to seeing you all next month. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.